Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Gorell, and thank you for participating in today's 300th Justice Clearinghouse webinar entitled Building a Preventive Crime Gun Strategy, a Playbook for Success. Now, our webinar for today has been sponsored by Ultra Electronics Forensic Technology, who is dedicated to educating justice personnel around the world about developing effective crime gun intelligence programs. They are a leader in forensic analysis, providing innovative and effective solutions like their innovative technology, the Integrated Ballistics Identification System. IBIS is designed to find the needle in the haystack by discovering matches between pairs of spent bullets and cartridge cases at speeds well beyond human capacity. Ultra Electronics Forensic Technology helps experts obtain timely information so they can make society a safer place. Now, our webinar today is facilitated by Jim Needles, who is manager of the Forensic Intelligence Strategy in North America for Ultra Electronics Forensic Technology. He will be exploring this issue with Major Michael Kane and Sergeant Josh May. Major Kane has been a member of the New Jersey State Police for over 23 years and is currently assigned as the commanding officer of the Forensic and Technical Services Section. The members of this section are highly experienced forensic practitioners who provide services related to alcohol and drug testing, forensic imaging and composite art, crime scene investigations, ballistic examinations, as well as laboratory analysis related to drugs, toxicology, DNA, trace evidence, and anthropology. He manages efforts to ensure that a quality system has been established to provide the law enforcement community the confidence that results from our state laboratories are accurate, impartial, and relevant. Sergeant May is a 17-year veteran of the Chattanooga, Tennessee Police Department, and he is currently assigned to the Organized Crime Unit, where he supervises the gun team, a unit that utilizes ballistic forensics to link shell casings to guns, guns to people, and people to crimes. Before conceptualizing and bringing the gun team into existence, Sergeant May served as the Focused Deterrence Coordinator from 2015 to 2018. This position headed up the CPD's portion of the Violence Reduction Initiative, which uses targeted enforcement, heavy relying on intelligence-led and data-driven policing techniques combined with social network analysis. And now, before we begin, I'd like to address some basic housekeeping items with everyone. First, the event is being recorded and it's scheduled to last about 60 minutes. Second, this is a listen-only event, but you can type in any questions you have for our presenters through the GoToWebinar toolbar, and we'll address as many as possible at the conclusion of the presentation. Next, if you experience any audio issues such as the sound cutting in and out intermittently, consider dialing and using the phone number included in your emailed invite. And when the system asks for a PIN, you can bypass that by hitting the pound key. We do have a polling question incorporated right into the start of this webinar, and you'll need to have access to your keyboard and mouse to participate. And finally, after today's webinar, there will be a follow-up survey with an extra question specifically asking you about additional topics that you would be interested in regarding gun crime investigations. This feedback helps us shape not only the work we do here at the Justice Clearinghouse, but also the presentations that Ultra Electronics Forensic Technology will be presenting in the coming months. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn the presentation over to you. Jim, it's all yours.
Thank you, Aaron. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is our 11th overall webinar in the last 3 years and our first of 4 webinars this year. Our series this year will revolve around issues concerning building a preventive crime gun strategy. Shortly, Ultra Electronics Forensic Technology will be unveiling a new book, Building a Preventive Crime Gun Strategy, a Playbook for Success. Written by Ron Nichols, Building a Preventive Crime Gun Strategy, a Playbook for Success provides law enforcement agencies with a comprehensive strategy for responding to firearm-related violence in their communities. Crime gun intelligence is a crucial part of this strategy, and it is what sets this playbook apart from other approaches. However, crime gun intelligence is only one of 8 components that make up a successful approach to crime gun prevention. The playbook, the steps that must be considered, the playbook details the steps that must be considered prior to launching a crime gun intelligence gathering initiative or enhancing a current initiative. The book then highlights the steps that can be used to help in current investigations. And finally, It identifies the steps required to ensure the strategy can be sustained and expanded to neighboring communities. The overall goal of this book is to assist you in building a preventive crime gun strategy that brings criminals to justice, provides a safe environment that allows citizens to realize their full human potential. Hearing from our two panel members, we're going to go through each of the 8 components. Major Kane and Sergeant May will tell you how they have implemented each of these components into their respective agencies' preventive crime gun strategies, stumbling blocks they encountered, and lessons learned. Let's get started. The first component is stakeholder buy-in. Next slide, please. Who are the stakeholders in a preventive crime gun strategy? The answer should include, at a minimum, 1 or more law enforcement agencies, whether they be local, regional, or federal, specialized groups within those agencies, the forensic science laboratory, even if the NIBIN system, will not be located at the lab, and prosecuting offices. Major Kane, how did stakeholder buy-in play a role in building of the New Jersey State Police strategy?
Well, our buy-in certainly came from results that mattered from our detectives. I would say that was the core ingredient. Early on, the information wasn't getting out to our detectives. It was more on an evidence-based, prosecution-based results from our forensics that was coming from our NIBIN program, and it wasn't getting out to the detectives in a timely fashion. So we realized that we had to change the way we did business. And once we were able to turn that ship around, we started seeing results that mattered, and that's what created the ultimate buy-in for us. Additionally, through the state, through our Attorney General's office and the policy of the division, the New Jersey State Police, and all our partner law enforcement agencies, we're committed. It's a fundamental priority to combat gun violence, and now more so than ever, we recognize that our crime gun intelligence leads to violent crime prevention. It's a preventative tool. We have in place at the state level and also at the county level and individual departments, there's policies and directives that drive this initiative, what we want to do. And ultimately, this leads into our relationships. And I have listed here a level of reciprocity, because most of the detectives, the violent crime detectives, the ladies and gentlemen that are tasked with investigating these types of crimes, they've, over the years, have created relationships. And what they do is, we see a lot of things bleed from one town into another. And they take advantage of these relationships, and they drop what they're doing, and they assist their partner agencies. So that's something that we preach, and it's something that works well for us. And then lastly, one of the major ingredients we have from a technical aspect, from a forensic aspect, is a community of interest within our ballistics community. So that's all the state ballistics labs and all our NIBIN sites throughout the state. They meet periodically, and they share information, best practices, and explore our standardized processes, seeing what's slowing us down, seeing what the choke points are, seeing if any policies need to be adjusted or rearranged, so we can continue to have a smooth process flow and continue to keep people on board. We realize there's a human element involved, but being that we're providing timely results that we believe that matter, that's what continues to give us the buy-in.
Excellent, thank you. Sergeant May, how is this component utilized in Chattanooga?
It's extremely important. We're a smaller agency. We're not a lab-based location. Most of our stuff was going to our state labs, so we became an independent NIBIN site. So the buy-in was a little bit different. Combining with our federal partners, the ATF specifically, we started focusing on the individuals that we already knew were committing a vast majority of this crime out here. Were actually being linked via NIBIN, and ballistic evidence gave us the opportunity to actually target those guys a little bit more effectively and with quantifiable data. and we were just able to get the buy-in from everybody along those lines as well. Interdepartmental wise, policies, procedures, ongoing training, continued education is extremely important. Letting everyone in your department understand how important it is to make sure you're picking up casings, treating every firearm as if it is a murder weapon, and following all the proper policies and procedures to ensure that that stuff is done. So just combining all that stuff with our other levels of focused deterrence and we just call the force multipliers, layering upon layering has been a very big boon as far as our buy-in from our stakeholders.
Excellent. Yeah, certainly a unified vision is necessary, and achieved only through the collaboration of stakeholders. Next slide. And one more, Aaron. Okay, let's look at the next component, the regional approach. Shooters and the firearms travel. No secret there. They're therefore a critical component of a successful preventive crime gun strategy is to ensure it includes a regional approach that bridges cross-jurisdictional gaps. Major, could you explain the regional approach in New Jersey?
Certainly. And again, from where I sit, where my responsibilities lie, our job is very heavy on the forensic and the technical services. So with that being said, we communicate continually with the other agencies that have established NIBIN programs throughout the state. So they sit at the city, the county level, as well as the state level. And they've identified through this community of interest that I have spoken of a common strategy related to how they use the equipment and the distribution, the timely distribution of our lead information. Additionally, we're currently enhancing or developing with our partnership with the ATF in New Jersey, a statewide crime gun intelligence center within our fusion center, which is our Regional Operations Intelligence Center, or the ROC. And that also includes our subsidiaries in the northern region of the state, as well as the south. And then through the ATF and partnerships and memorandums of understanding, we have some task force operations that are based their activities and their operations and their investigations on the crime gun intelligence. And what we've seen is darn near close to 40% of our NIBIN hits are multi-jurisdictional. So it requires a collaboration, a multi-agency collaboration for a quick and effective response. And right now we have these task force operations in the north and the south. One is up in Essex County and there's one is down in Camden County in New Jersey. We see, again, most importantly, we have over 500 police agencies in the state of New Jersey. And a lot of the trends are clustered. We see them clustered within a geographic environment. So it's, again, it falls back on our collaborations, willingness to collaborate, as well as our relationships.
Thank you. Next slide. Sergeant May, the regional approach in Chattanooga. Could you explain that?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're a relatively new site. We've only been functional for about 2 years now. We don't have the background some of the other larger agencies have. So we're still in a phase of pushing out information, exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it. So continued education is extremely important. Getting to other agencies and doing, explaining to them what our philosophies, what our capabilities are, and, advising, obviously, that criminals don't know borders or boundaries, nor do they care about them. So that guns picked up in X, Y, and Z could, NIBIN back to other agencies, other locations. So keeping the open lines of communication as well as ongoing education is key. I run as a point of contact. We do take in everybody's, all of our surrounding agencies, casings, as well as test fires. We have one analyst, me, that does all the work. So I'll make sure that I push all that out in a funnel so everyone is properly informed on NIBIN leads when they come out and what they want to do with them. The big thing is you want to eliminate your information silos. A lot of agencies want to keep everything, compartmentalized in their narcotics division or in their gang, street crimes division, whatever you want to call it. So, understanding that, these individuals cross over from one location to the other, but also from crimes to one another is key to success.
Okay, yeah, certainly the regional approach helps maximize an investigator's ability to link and solve more crimes. And the reason's simple. I mean, criminals and their firearms travel. Next slide, please. The next component is the cornerstone of the strategy, NIBIN. Simply put, NIBIN's a program that generates actionable leads, linking shootings, crimes, and incidents that otherwise may not have been linked. Major Kane, could you discuss the role of NIBIN in the New Jersey State Police strategy?
Certainly. As I said earlier, we had it wrong. We were early on with our NIBIN program. I think we were looking more to provide a tool to enhance our prosecution. We weren't looking at NIBIN as a crime-fighting tool. Early on, we had certain case qualifications. We were just looking at higher tiered cases. So we've gone through some growing pains. And we've learned by doing, but we've also learned by talking to a lot of smart people out there throughout the nation that are looking to enhance their own programs. I certainly I can't take credit for any of the foundation that's in place here. Upon taking command, I certainly was handed the keys to a sports car, and we're continuing to fine tune it. But with that, our goal remains the same, and speed is paramount. We're looking to have reduced our turnaround time as we produce leads related to our ballistics evidence. In 2014, we had a 10-month turnaround time on average for every ballistic case that was submitted in the NIBIN. And we were made aware of that from an urban police department that certainly made a complaint and said that, I love this information that we're getting back, but when I get it, our detectives get it 10 months later, there's really not much we can do with it. The detectives have moved on to new cases, and they're working on new things, and a lot of the information isn't relevant any longer. And we realized the fact that there's a significant amount of resources. So we painstakingly turned the problem around, and we put the NIBIN process at the front end of our examination. In the past, a community gun or a found gun, if it was brought to our ballistics unit, we would say it wasn't NIBIN eligible, or if it had a defaced serial number, we wouldn't put it into our NIBIN program. We were just looking at the higher tier cases. And again, we realized that we had some things wrong. So we're continuing to evolve, and we certainly have begun to understand the important role that the detectives and the investigators play across our state. The detectives realize it's not just his or her case. The evidence or the links or the leads could certainly impact the detective in another jurisdiction. We realize that importance, and again, we're still on the daily working through process flows that certainly look to enhance our turnaround time. With that, in 2015, we implemented our crime gun protocol. And through this program, we look to assess both the inside and the outside of our guns. The protocols reduced our turnaround time. In support of that, a public law came on the books in 2013, and it requires all our submitting agencies to submit all the ballistics information and ballistics evidence in a timely manner. So it certainly helps that support, having that public law on the books that supports what we do day in and day out. When the guns come in, they're submitted to our ballistics unit. We also have regional drop-off locations in the northern and the southern portion of the state to assist with the transport of the crime guns and ballistics evidence to our ballistics unit. Upon arrival, our detectives within our crime scene investigations unit, they'll look at the inside and the outside of the gun. They'll conduct a visual inspection. They'll also use microscopic equipment, alternative light sources. They'll look at the weapon for the presence of any biological material, fibers, hair, or anything of evidential value. And additionally, they'll swab the gun for latent fingerprints to be used at a later time. If the crime gun comes in and it possesses an altered serial number or anything that's defaced, we'll document that through our detectives that are assigned to our forensic photography unit. The guns are test fired, and then the test casings are turned over to our NIBIN tech for entry into NIBIN. And then once we have a potential NIBIN hit, a NIBIN alert is immediately distributed through a listserv, and it's approximately 3,000 members on this listserv. So it goes out to our appropriate members of the law enforcement community, to include all the violent crime investigators, our fusion center, and the members of our ballistics community of interest. And then lastly, the information that is learned, we populate that in our gun ops database, which is made accessible for further distribution analysis and operational follow-up. And it also allows us to link to additional crimes that are already populated within that database. Now, again, just keep in mind, I mean, this is the forensic and the technical aspect of this process. We are adopting the ATF's model of the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, and we own this front end of it. And we realize it's the forensics, it's the forensic intelligence that moves it towards the analytical portion, the analysis of the information that's coming as a result of these processes.
Excellent. Thank you. Sergeant May, how does the Chattanooga PD utilize NIBIN? And next slide, please.
Yeah, so when we got NIBIN, we had a ton of information that was coming in, and at the time really didn't understand who to give it to, which is a common problem, I assume, for most agencies. So we were sending the information, the leads, out to our gang unit at the time, who were already overtasked, as well as patrol officers. We created what was called the gun team. It's a unit that's strictly dedicated to not only NIBIN lead follow-ups, but every shots fired follow-up as well. We go out the next day, within 48 hours after a shot's fired is called in. We work with our crime analysis unit to understand where to go to. And we recanvass for not just evidence, ballistic evidence, but for video evidence, for additional information. What I was looking at was that the NIBIN leads would come in sometimes months apart, and then an investigation would begin then, which seemed kind of counterproductive to me. So why don't we start the next day, gather more information, more intelligence, go and speak to individuals after the scene's not so hot. And it's been extremely successful with the amount of video surveillance, information, individuals willing to talk to you afterwards. So that was the key, a key turning point in making us pretty successful. When we do the gun team build out, also when they follow up on a NIBIN lead that has anything that has a nexus to any homicides or shootings, we work with our major crimes detectives. We have a dedicated NIBIN entry personnel. We don't, like I said, we do not have the lab set up. So what we needed to do also was get our DAs and AUSAs on board as well, to find out if we're just checking boxes as far as DNA and fingerprints. And I urge everyone to do that as well. Find out what they will accept, what they want to push on for prosecution, and such. So we've had to change policies and procedures on shell casing, picking up, utilizing body cams, utilizing just essentially chain of custody of shell casings as well as firearms from point A to point B all the way to court. So, making sure that you have a clear line of chain of custody to push all your stuff through to your property division or wherever you keep it. The ATF MROS, the minimum required operating standards, came out in July of this year for everyone to essentially abide by the end of 2020, we found that we were already adhering to those, the comprehensive collection, timely turnaround, appropriate follow-up. Anytime a NIBIN lead comes in, I utilize Analyst Notebook, I2 program, create the link chart, and I send that out to every officer who has any vested interest. Even if the officer just picked up shell casing 6 months ago, he's going to get this link chart, link analysis chart to show that he is an important part of this process overall. And then the feedback loop, making sure everyone knows where everyone else is at. But you have to have the appropriate follow-up to be successful. If you're just getting the information and not doing anything with it, you're doing your agency as well as the community members a great disservice.
Okay. Certainly, NIBIN can be leveraged across the jurisdictional boundaries. NIBIN currently links over 200 sites and 3,000 law enforcement agencies in the U.S. If necessary, it can also be linked to agencies internationally. Let's talk about our next component, the overlay of technologies. NIBIN is one technology. In building a successful preventive crime gun strategy, it's essential that many technologies be examined for their potential to help in the overall effort. How are other technologies used in New Jersey? Major Kane?
Yes, again, some of this is going to be rather redundant, but in support of our NIBIN program, we utilize our GunOps software to share that information on a statewide operating picture. We also utilize the ATF's E-Trace program, and our Fusion Center in division headquarters. They collect information throughout the day and release that information, timely. Most of it's related to gun arrests across the state, what the shooting environment looks like, notifications. So anything related to any type of violent crime, specifically any type of gunplay, that information is released through our Fusion Center to quite a few different listservs that we have throughout the state.
Very good. And Sergeant May, what are some of the technologies utilized in the Chattanooga strategy?
Yeah, I completely concur with the E-Trace has been a game changer. Getting back to who purchased the firearms that do end up with NIBIN leads on them. We utilize our focus deterrence to identify who the main pushers of violence are, who's driving all the violence. We have a real-time intelligence center as well, public safety cameras. That once again, we do the follow-ups, getting information, getting that video pushed out to our patrol officers as well. So everyone has a vested interest in it, understands what we're looking for. Our crime analysis unit has been a huge part of what we do. We're able to identify where we need to be when we need to be there, and where the areas are that are more prone to the violence based on our data. And then once again, your manpower optimization, shot fire follow-ups. That's just been so huge for us. Going back out, getting buy-in from the community, which we'll talk about later, but getting the information from the community members who know what's going on in the streets, because I believe the statistics are for how many shots fired that actually occur versus where actually called in to police are very relatively low. So, getting more information on where we need to be and when we need to be there is key.
Excellent. Certainly the goal is to develop pertinent information from all available sources, into actionable leads, as well as provide investigators and prosecutors with irrefutable data to corroborate witness testimony. And by overlaying technologies, you can achieve that goal. The fifth component of an effective preventive crime gun strategy is knowing offenders and how they interact with one another and with the community at large. Major, explain how this component is being developed in New Jersey.
Yes, we're continuing our partnership with the ATF, and we're developing and enhancing our CGIC, or our Crime Gun Intelligence Center, which will be housed in our Regional Operations Intelligence Center, our Fusion Center. And with utilizing the ATF model, we look to enhance our efforts to identify our actors, link the activities, identify the sources of the guns, and we're looking for that immediate disruption, investigation, and ultimately a successful prosecution. And again, you know, what we see are our trends in the northern end of the state, the central and the south end of the state. You know, they're relative to the geographic environment. Quite some time ago, I was assigned to the Atlantic City environment in the southern end of our state. And what we saw there was these crimes and these NIBIN alerts and our actors, and these activities could be linked between the various jurisdictions that ran up and down Route 30 down in the southern end of our state. And a lot of that information was shared through periodic intelligence meetings. And I was actually present in a meeting where, you know, we discussed a NIBIN hit, and the information that was listed on there, the victims' information, and the neighboring towns, you know, just through the course of a cup of coffee and a conversation after this intelligence meeting, were able to identify that their investigations were linked and subsequently tied into a third investigation. So, you know, knowing who our offenders are, I mean, sometimes it takes a little bit for it to click. You know, sometimes it's done informally, you know, but these NIBIN alerts, when they go out, sometimes they're packed with a lot of information. And we're seeing that if you take the time to interact with the detectives from the other agencies, from the neighboring towns, that's when the investigation begins to take root. And we can better identify who we want to case up and who's a good target to go after, and who should we be concentrating our investigative resources on.
Thank you. Sergeant May, could you explain how this component contributes to the Chattanooga strategy?
Yeah, that's correct. Very similar to what the Major said was, you know, obviously keeping open lines of communication. We've created email distribution lists with outside agencies as well as interdepartmentally, where we do have a constant flow to our intelligence unit, as well as our gang guys and our patrol division as well, neighborhood policing division as well. We really want to eliminate that silo, like I talked about earlier, where individuals, you know, agencies and departments, units, whatever, keep information to themselves when in the end you're working the same cases on the same people. We utilize probation and parole quite a bit. We have them in-house as well. So when we see individuals on probation and parole, we can go do routine checks on those individuals. Social network analysis is key as well. Identifying who's with who, when they're with one another, where they're at, what they're doing. So pushing out to the patrol division to you know, do quality field interviews. You know who your offenders are, where they're at, what they're doing, and to do complete reports as well, including you know, vehicle information. So when something vague comes out as a red vehicle, you can actually expound upon that through reports. The E-Trace, once again, has been key, going back for straw purchasers as well, bringing them in and speaking with them as well. But keeping the open lines of communication is definitely the key, all the way down through your patrol division, internally and externally.
Very good. Yes, certainly knowledge of offenders, how they interact, will help ensure that the most comprehensive intelligence is developed. Which leads us to our next component, utilizing one intelligence unit. Collaborative intelligence sharing among agencies is essential to successful preventive crime gun strategy. Rarely will a single law enforcement agency have all the tools and expertise from which a crime gun intelligence strategy can benefit. Major Kane, could you explain the vision for how this component will be utilized in New Jersey?
Yes, Jim. We're currently developing our crime gun intelligence center, and that it will be housed within our fusion center. And we're still rounding that out with our partnership with the ATF. The way it stands right now is, I mentioned earlier, I mean, there's 7 NIBIN sites in the state of New Jersey, and we've standardized what that collection looks like, as well as the broadcast of the lead information. You know, we just need to make sure that that information that is at the top end of the state is being shared with the the central and the southern portion of the state. So that's one of the things we're working towards right now. Pretty comfortable with our processes, our independent processes, and our stakeholders are all following the same playbook. But we just want to make sure that the information is coming timely to our fusion center for distribution. As Sergeant May had indicated, we want to make sure that we're not creating any silos. And we have seen over and over and over again that my target could certainly be the next town over. It could be their target. So we're conscious of that. And again, we'd be fooling ourselves if we thought we had it right where it stands right now. So we're still continuing to build out and fine tune.
Okay. And Sergeant May, how is the intelligence component handled in Chattanooga?
Yeah, we kind of serve as that function, pushing the information out. So our intelligence unit will get intelligence, various information in. They'll crunch it, vet it, and then send it back out to all of our invested stakeholders. We send out a weekly intelligence report to all the shareholders who want to be part of this. Let them know what's going on, what we're doing, keeping everyone on the same page as far as targets go, what's going on within the city, and how they can buy in. But I think it's important to have that one funneled location that you can actually send it to, so where people can send things into and get quality intelligence back out to be productive.
Okay, yes, certainly it is essential that there's strong communication, whether it's interagency or intra-agency. This communication must allow for rapid dissemination of this critical information. Let's go to the next component, public buy-in. When discussing public buy-in, the primary focus is to provide stakeholders with sufficient information to demonstrate the value of the program and the potential it will have. It is essential that successes be defined and used to highlight the program, which in turn will help to promote goodwill and confidence in law enforcement. How does Chattanooga address this component, Sergeant May?
Yeah, so what I started doing was engaging the community, our local groups, whether that's the Moms Demand Action groups or our local neighborhood groups. I created a presentation to show them exactly what our strategy was. Not being too OPSEC on it, but allowing them to see exactly what their tax dollars are going to and being extremely transparent, extremely important, so that they don't think we're just sitting on our hands. Bringing them into what our laws are, how probation, parole, just giving them the knowledge instead of them just having an assumption on actually what we're doing and how we can do things. So in 2019, whereas many laws can be debated, whether that's marijuana legalization or various other laws, it's really hard to debate that we shouldn't be looking for people who shoot kids in the face. So getting everyone on board like that hasn't been too difficult, but spreading the word is extremely important. So once again, going to the presentation, going to the community group, showing these presentations. We've also set up email addresses for anonymous tips concerning gun and gun violence. We make sure that we explain that anonymity is of extreme importance to us, so that we do get the buy-in from the community members. And once again, just letting them know that they're a part of this, the most important part of this, that we're out here to eradicate as much gun violence within the communities as we possibly can.
Okay, and this anonymous tips email address that was set up, is that apart from, say, Crime Stoppers or others?
It is. I actually brought this to our public information officer, who's actually listening right now, and created her a whole bunch of new work because now we're going to highlight all of our prospective units within the department on our website, so they can make contact and give these tips. So we're pushing them out to the community members, and anytime we interact with the public, we want to make sure that they can email information into us, and we take a look at that.
Okay, very good. We're going to move on to our final component, which is expanding the program. Outlying communities, they're frequented by shooters. They should be identified so that those communities can be incorporated into the strategy. As these outlying communities are brought into and become directly involved in the regional initiative, covered regions will begin to overlap, thereby providing greater security to the community. What are the plans to expand the program in New Jersey, Major Kane?
Yeah, Jim, we're going to continue our outreach. And when I say outreach, it's within our customer base, who are law enforcement agencies that subscribe to participation with our NIBIN program, and continue to get that buy-in and show them the relevance and the results that they receive. We certainly have gone out of our way to enhance the speed in which this ballistics evidence can be submitted. We continue to fine-tune that. We have a LIMS, evidence management system, and from time to time we'll take a look at, through an audit of who our customer base is and who is submitting, and we'll see some turnaround times from the time of the crime to the time of submission. Sometimes it's in excess of 30-some days. So very diplomatically, sometimes we'll take an approach to see if we can shorten that gap. Additionally, we're looking to develop our statewide, our CGIC, our Crime Gun Intelligence Center. Again, that's something that's evolving. And we're going to continue to have our meetings within our ballistics community of interest. And again, these are periodic meetings. We'd like to have at least one a quarter, but sometimes circumstances will tick up, and we'll have something, month to month or maybe week to week. We've recently had some developments in a murder investigation where we saw the impact of using the correct ammunition with the crime gun, and we saw the value in that. So we pulled together a meeting pretty quickly with our ballistics detectives and shared that information with the other ballistics laboratories throughout the state. Again, we continue to explore our processes and how we can remain standardized. Throughout the state, regionally, we focus on intelligence meetings that rely on the violent crime and the intelligence that's born out of our NIBIN program and the analysis. I mean, there's a strategy for our safe streets. We realize that violent crime threatens our citizens and the vitality of our cities. So there's a comprehensive approach in place to intensify our focus on those who perpetrate a lot of this street level violence. And again, that ties back into our fundamental priority of combating gun violence. Recently, we've done an analysis of our NIBIN information. We partnered with Rutgers University and their master's program, and we took a look at their big data. And historically, we looked at information that was collected through NIBIN from the calendar year 2014 to the back end of 2017. And we asked the grad students to take a look and see if they can identify any common cross-jurisdictional relationships, common firearm calibers, as well as the average time and the distance between linked events. And I can share some of that information with you now. It's some of it's been pretty eye-opening. The first question that we asked was, how many NIBIN hits are amongst other agencies or cross agencies? And the results came back that 38% of our NIBIN hits were cross-jurisdictional. And as I mentioned earlier, most common cross-agency relationships we found were clustered regionally throughout the state. Our most common firearm calibers in all our linked events were a 9mm and a 40 cal. And we saw that the average time between our linked events was 116 days. Or if there was 3 or more shooting events in that NIBIN alert, we found it to be 28 days. And the average distance between linked events was 5.7 miles. So, I mean, that really depicts how clustered, the state of New Jersey is. And We also sought to predict the length of time before a firearm is used again when looking at all our linked events. And we found that when a gun is used in 3 or more instances, there was a high likelihood of additional events 70% of the time. So that's, all very telling information. It's information that we've, we're fine tuning that. We're going to do another study, but I mean, for the commanders and the unit leads for these violent crime unit, that's all very telling information. And I believe that's results that matter. So, that's something that we're going to continue to include as we expand our program. One of the other things that we're looking at, Jim, is, taking a look at the survey of our NIBIN results. I know you touched on it on your lead in, but as we continue to build our relationship with our partner agencies, we need to see how effective we're being, how effective the results are. We also are striving to see who's reading this, who's reading the information. Is it getting out there? Is it getting into the hands of the right investigators in a timely fashion? And, reassuring the fact that, why are we doing this? Obviously, we're doing this as in a preventative nature, but we're looking to reduce violent crime. And recently, we've been involved in some peer-to-peer visitations with some other programs through the Bureau of Justice Assistance and the Department of Justice, and we're taking a look at our policies and our processes, and we're sharing information nationwide. So we'll continue to partake in these programs. They certainly have high value to us. And then lastly, it's just overall a relentless follow-up in what we do day in and day out. From the time it comes to us, submitted as evidence, when we do our forensic and technical evaluation, to the time we kick it out the door and it's up for analysis, we want to make sure that we're putting our best product out there. So we continue to talk to a lot of smart people. We continue to talk with other agencies that we do business with. And ultimately, we're looking to share some of our success stories, but we're also looking to share some of our failures and things that we need to tighten up, and constantly looking for answers.
Well, certainly the use of academic institutions is a great resource. And in Chattanooga, Sergeant May, how are you looking at the program?
Yeah, well, we want to set ourselves up to where we want to be, not necessarily where we're at right now, and that is through failures and successes, reevaluating the data that comes in, the cases that we make, what during trials and other such incidences, lend us to be more successful. We also really want to increase our public buy-in quite a bit. We found that, once again, I can't harp on the follow-ups enough. Prior to the gun team going out and following up on houses that were shot up with no named offenders, those cases kind of went cold. They just sat over and were essentially suspended cases. And we want to make sure the public understands, and show them that we actually give a crap about what's going on in their neighborhoods and their communities. Want to change the public perception that the PD doesn't care about what's going on in their city, as well as what's going on with gun crimes. So also more evidence being located. We want our officers to be more diligent in picking up and being more apt to look for various forms of evidence, whether that's video surveillance, CIs or whatnot, to what's going on within the communities and what's going on in their districts and their neighborhoods that they're patrolling. Also creating public policies and procedures that aid now, but also, once again, build for the future. So we've noticed some failures on the way we're storing our ammunition, our magazines, and some of the other stuff that were just little issues in our property division. So going back, changing those, getting them actually on paper, holding individuals accountable for not following with these policies and procedures is key. And once again, keeping up the departmental-wide and regional training is a must. We teach all of our cadets what's going on. We teach, once again, the community what we're doing, where we plan to go, what our response to the violence within the community are. And we want to make sure that we're all on the same page and tackling gun crime epidemic as it pushes through the cities. We also reestablished our Project Safe Neighborhoods, prohibited possessor cases. So we do those. My gun team does those as well. So focusing in on the small amount of offenders that are in this revolving door of the criminal justice system that need to be not necessarily on the streets, committing more violence, ensuring that they're either prosecuted fully on state level or in the federal system. But once again, just everyone being on the same page and agreeing that we need to push forward and not resting on our laurels.
Certainly. As a preventive crime gun strategy becomes successful, there will be a desire from other agencies to either join in or emulate that strategy. It's best that the nearby communities become part of an existing strategy because, as seen from the second component, greater success is realized with a regional approach. That is a summary of the 8 components and how these 2 agencies utilize them in building their preventive crime gun strategy. So the question is there one major key upon which you should focus when putting together your strategy? The overarching key is innovation. It's the willingness to critically evaluate current processes, procedures, and policies and embrace new ways of thinking. This is a concept also discussed in Pete Gagliardi's book, 13 Critical Tasks. One common mistake is to associate innovation solely with technology. Technology implementation generates a need to reassess personal assignments and processes in order to better leverage the power of that technology. Fitting a new technology into existing processes can severely limit the effectiveness of that technology. A misallocation of personnel, such as using experienced firearms examiners to perform technician level work, can also handicap the potential of a technology. People, processes, and technology have to be properly aligned, and innovation is needed to accomplish this. Next slide. Let's take a look at a best practice from each agency and how they incorporated them into their strategy. Major Kane, could you explain the placards the New Jersey State Police place in their patrol cars?
Yes, Jim, and it all starts with the recovery and the collection of evidence. So what we've done over the years is we certainly put a playbook together, best practices for our members in uniform patrol and in some of our higher end proactive units. It's a placard that they can keep in their duty bag or something they can keep on the visor of the troop car. But it's quick resource, something that they can refer to that takes them through the steps in recovery, all the way up to the report writing process. With a heavy emphasis on officer safety, preservation of the evidence, how we would like it received, how we would want it handled, certainly to preserve evidence the best we can. And also gives them some thoughts, some questions that are commonly asked in the queries, and it certainly reminds them to, utilize NCIC and E-Trace. And, in addition to this, there's timely reminders that are in services and a lot of our training throughout the year, as Sergeant May said, that reminds of the importance of this program and that speed is paramount.
Excellent. And next slide. That is the back of the placard, the safety first. I like the caption on the top of the front of that card. Treat every gun like a murder weapon.
Yeah, it's the front and the back, Jim. So it's it's a placard, and the first page is the front, and then this is the back of the placard.
Excellent. Next slide. Sergeant May, how is this firearms questionnaire utilized in Chattanooga?
Yeah, so this was brought over by one of our ATF special agents when he came over from Memphis. He suggested this to us, and we adopted it. So, okay, we stole it, but whatever. And put this into our policy that on every firearm that's seized off an individual, one of these questionnaires must be filled out. On one side, it's going to be Miranda warnings. So if it's a in custody arrest or something along those lines, the officers are obviously to read that and then fill out this questionnaire. If it's refused for the individual to participate, they just write refused on it. However, these questionnaires have been extremely successful. It identifies individuals that are known prohibited possessors, identifies possession during NIBIN hits or leads to come back in at a later time, straw purchasers as well, also a user in possession down at the bottom. If you use illegal substances, how long you've used illegal substances, if your AUSA takes those types of cases. But the most important thing at the bottom is the signature of the possessor. We encourage the officers to fill these out on their body cams or on their in-car cameras so that there's no coercion or anything that's brought up like that. These are to be turned in with every firearm after they've been seized, and they're utilized in court cases. We have some really good success stories where we've actually gone back and re-interviewed people with this form after getting NIBIN leads 2 years older on reckless endangerments, and they've actually admitted that along with E-Trace to being in possession of the firearm during those times. So once again, getting that signature at the bottom has been key, but making sure it's filled out is extremely important. We utilize these in our Project Safe Neighborhoods, prohibited possessor meetings, as well as other cases on individuals with firearms.
Very good. Next slide. For our listeners, if you would like to contact either Major Kane or Sergeant May, there is their contact information. Major Kane, Sergeant May, thank you for taking the time today and sharing your information, and thank you for the work you do. With regards to the new book, Building a Preventive Crime Gun Strategy, a Playbook for Success, it is currently at the publisher and will be available shortly free of charge. If you would like to pre-order a copy, please go to our website, info@ultra-ft.com. That's info@ultra-ft.com. And you can leave your information there. When the books are available, we can get them out to you. As soon as the books are ready for delivery, you're going to be able to direct order from our main website, ultra-forensictechnology.com. Finally, Aaron has a question for our listeners regarding upcoming webinars. Thank you for joining us today.
You bet. Jim, Major Kane, Sergeant May, thank you all very much for some great information that you shared today. Folks, we have received a lot of audience questions, so we're going to dive right into those in just a second. Again, before you close out of the whole webinar, there will be a post-webinar survey. Please answer, especially the question where we're asking what other gun crime investigation topics would you like to see addressed in the future? And do know that we are tentatively planning a follow-up Ultra Electronics Forensic Technology webinar for 1 o'clock Eastern on April 23rd. Can't register for that quite yet, but we're looking to get that registration page up shortly, and we'll let you know. And Jim, for our audience questions, I'll go ahead and direct them towards you and let you determine who best could respond, maybe everyone. And if you are ready, we'll go ahead and dive right in. So our first question is from Michelle. What is considered timely? And is that from both a collection submittal side as well as from an entry side?
Major Kane, would you like to start with that?
Yeah, I think I can jump on that one. I mean, timely, I mean, ultimately, you know, if we seize a crime gun during the course of a business day, you know, regionally with our drop-off locations and the way we're situated in a very narrow corridor state, we'd like to see that crime gun come into us that business day, if not the next day. I can tell you in my commands and in my duty assignments, if we seized a crime gun, you know, that was the conversation immediately. You know, when are we getting this gun up to ballistics? Again, I alluded to earlier with an audit of our submitting agencies. I mean, if a community gun or a found gun is submitted to us, you know, 30 days after seizure as contraband, I mean, that's counterproductive to our program. So Timely is, I guess it's in quotes. It's open to interpretation, but a reasonable period of time is what we expect. We know the departments have obstacles and resources, and things tend to spike up. But I think realistically, we'd like to see it there, within that day or the next couple of days to maximize our crime gun intelligence.
Great, thank you very much. Jim, we do have a request for you to repeat the email address for requesting the book by Ron Nichols.
Sure. For pre-orders, they can go to info, it's INFO, at ultra-ft.com.
And we will, sorry.
Leave your information at that site. And like I said, when the books are available, they can be ordered directly from our main website, which is ultra-forensictechnology.com.
Great, thank you, Jim. We'll post that to the Justice Clearinghouse site as well. The next question is from Tricia. How quickly are you able to respond and react to changes in criminal strategies to procure and use firearms?
Sergeant May, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I think that we have we've utilized it with our crime analysis unit. We have very, very up to speed, up to date, up to essentially the minute intelligence that comes in. So we're able to, kind of get everyone together in the right room, the right place, at the right time, and make these strategic turns pretty quickly. When we see one group that may be out here causing violence that we need to focus on, we're able to sit down and identify the main individuals in that group, and within 24 to 48 hours have a plan of action ready to go. After any shooting or homicide that goes on, we all get text messages notified via text, and we begin the plan of actions right then. We understand we can't stop the shooting that just happened, obviously, but we can try to stop the shootings that are going to be in retaliation. So very, very quickly, but it all depends on how up to speed the information flow is, and how everyone's working on the same page together.
Very good. Next question is from Michelle. What kind of information is captured on the shots fired log?
Yeah, on our shots fired log, we'll have the complaint number, our CAD cards, which will have anything that's put in with as in regards to what the callers call in. It'll also have at times, if it gets to the crime analysis unit in time, the report from the officer after he writes it, if there's been any property damage or shell casings located, if they're targeted, if it's gang related, and all that. I mean, it gives a time, date stamp, and everything. So it's pretty comprehensive. So we understand where things are happening and where we need to be. In turn, we flip it around. My guys will we'll do, like I said, social network analysis. We may not know who's on the scene at that time. We'll run them through our various databases to find out who lives at the certain location, who may have been targeted. And once again, we put that plan of action into play. So once again, my email is up here. If anyone wants what we do with our shots fired log, I'd be happy to send them one and put them in contact with our crime analysis unit, who does phenomenal work on a daily basis.
Great, thank you so much. Next question is from Tracy. Do you have a backlog for NIBIN, and how long do NIBIN results typically take?
I can jump on that. We typically don't see a backlog in NIBIN. Again, that's, we staff our NIBIN component, Monday through Friday. Obviously, if a higher tier case would come to our attention and meet certain qualifications, we would bring detectives in to meet to take care of that evidence submission. From time to time, with staffing and some training and things outside of our control, we possibly could see a little bit of a backup there. But by the time we get our hands on the evidence and the time it's submitted to our NIBIN folk, we expect about a 24-hour turnaround. More often than not, it's less than 24 hours. There's some instances that take us out of that 24-hour range. But communication is key, especially with our customer base, with some of our higher end participants. The more frequency, effective communication allows us to jump in and make sure that we get it where it needs to be. We've been known to hold people over, and as I alluded to, we'll bring people in off hours to make sure that we comply with the mission.
Outstanding. One of my favorite things about the Justice Clearinghouse is when our audience members share some of their best practices, and I got to share this one with you from Chief, hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Agay. It's not always easy to do, but somehow letting the beat cop or crime scene technician who collected and turned in the casings at a shots fired call that helped clear a case, letting them know the end result of that case is sometimes very inspirational. So I did want to share that from the Chief.
Good example of feedback.
That's a great point, and that's one of the things I think we're lacking. What are the results of our lead information that we put out there? I would love to get some of that information in a timely. You're breaking up. I'd love to get some of that information back more timely so I can share it with our ballistics examiners and our NIBIN technicians. I mean, that's important.
Yeah,
those success stories go a long way.
Yeah, it's huge. That goes back into the information silos that we're really bad about, that this case belongs to, say, your homicide unit. And just because it has a nexus factor there doesn't mean that it didn't start with 2 shots fired and a found property. So getting everyone involved, because you never know what these officers know out here. Your midnight shift guys are, they're a wealth of information, and they may have something that breaks a case. Keeping them all involved is definitely key.
Great.
Additionally, we're starting to see, more with our prosecuting authorities where they're asking to come up and sit and speak with our ballistics examiners as well as our NIBIN techs, to have that connection, so they can interpret the data more readily. Sometimes we see it for court proceedings, but more recently we've been seeing it in advance of affidavits for search warrants. So, I think we're trending in the right direction there.
Great. Major Kane, the next question I believe is also for you. You talked about the NIBIN results survey. Is that something that you're able to share, or is it privileged confidential information?
Well, we're working through that. I should have something in very short order. Again, that collaboration was with Rutgers University. So I will follow up with that and certainly look to release that. I just want to make sure I'm on good footing there before I release that information. We have a PowerPoint that's put together related to that. But again, let me run that through the chairs and I'll follow up.
Certainly. And to that point, the next question actually is, can you talk a little bit more about how it was to work with Rutgers and academics in general? Are there some best practices that you can recommend, and what kind of other deliverables have you produced together?
It was actually, it was very interesting, the process. It was kind of a back to school moment for myself, to sit down with the intellectuals. They're really smart people. So the program is, it's through the Police Institute at the Rutgers School of Criminal Justice. And, they work on big data issues, big data problems. So we certainly had a lot of big data. And, it was the cumulative NIBIN results from 2014 at the present time, it was the back end of 2017. So when we put it together, so we sat down and, I don't want to say we had to dumb it down, but, we certainly, collectively came across some questions that we thought that was important to us. And then we shared it with the students. So a little bit of a learning curve for them, but once they they were able to put it together. Just the bandwidth and the thought process that was involved. I mean, you know, it was quite interesting process to be part of. And then we're looking to do that. Like I said, we presented this to the State Police Command and also representatives of Rutgers University. So we're looking to replicate this process and have it more timely. You know, one of the hiccups we had, one of the things that delayed some of the reporting on this was our historical documents. You know, we had them in 3-ring binder. We didn't have them electronically, so we kind of had to hand jam the front end of our analysis. But now we have it electronically, so it should make for a smoother transition.
Great. Just a couple more questions, gentlemen. Next one is from Victor. Do you have any suggestions about how we might revise an agency workflow where one of the detectives assigned to NIBIN cases reviews those cases, but does not share the intelligence derived from the case?
Oh, that's not good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's once again those silos. You need to in reading you know 13 critical tasks. One of the key points in there is always policy. Mm-hmm. So ensuring that you know there's something written that can hold individuals accountable to keep something like that from happening is paramount. You're no good if you're hoarding all the information on a computer in your office. There's lots of men and women. I've had several other agencies that I've helped try to get started up, and one of the big things is you know not wanting to share the information. And if you're just hoarding it all on one computer, you're doing a great disservice to all the other men and women that are out here. You know, trying to they're on the front lines essentially. You know, so because in the end, even just the intelligence is powerful. So when you actually have actionable leads and you can actually make cases, it can be truly, you know, you can drop crime down quite a bit.
No, so well said, Sergeant May. But I would concur with what Sergeant May said, and additionally, you know, diplomatically, that conversation needs to be had. I recommend that you reach out to anyone here participating in that call. I mean, I think we could certainly provide the value in sharing this information in a timely fashion.
Great, thank you. The last question is a somewhat technical question, so it's kind of interesting. Have you had any issues with modularity weapons such as the SIG P320 that allows subjects to change from to fire a different caliber, such as a 9mm change kit to discharge a .40 caliber?
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, we haven't done it either.
I can certainly follow up on that. You know, my email's listed with my contact information. If you want to forward that question specifically, I'll certainly speak to our subject matter experts. I'm sure our ballistics examiners are you know, been exposed to something of the like. So I can certainly follow up with asking the really smart people the answer to that question.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Major. Major Kane, Sergeant May, Jim, thank you all very much for spending the time with us today and walking through best practices and things that you recommend. Jim, I'll hand it off to you and see if you want to make any closing remarks.
Well, I just like our listeners for thank you for joining us today. As was stated, watch for our next webinar, will be April 23rd.
Outstanding. And again, thank you, everyone. Thank you to Ultra Electronics Forensic Technology. And with that, this concludes today's Justice Clearinghouse webinar. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Bye now.